Good day, everyone. I'm Jalisa G. Tiboron of BSED English 2A. Today, I will discuss the continuation of the Module 9 entitled The Sumerian and Early Babylonian Myth, which is the origins and gods Babylonian, reported by Mr. Samson. So let's dive into the video.
Apparently, the gods were displeased with the human race, for they held a council in which it was agreed that mankind should be drowned. But Ea, the god of wisdom, wished to spare human beings. So Ea told one man, Utnapishtim, to build a ship for his family and all living creatures. Utnapishtim worked diligently, and by the time the rains came, his ship was prepared. For 6 days and nights, a fall rain flooded everything on earth, and even the gods became fearful. By the 7th day, the winds and rains ceased. But Utnapishtim and his family had become mad. The ship came to rest upon Mountain Nishir, and Utnapishtim sent forth birds to find out whether the waters had subsided enough to disembark. When a raven failed to return, Utnapishtim left the ship and offered a sacrifice to the gods on the mountain peak. Only Enlil, god of the tempest, was angered to see that humanity had been spared. But Ea managed to placate Enlil with soft words, and in token of his reconciliation, Enlil gave Utnapishtim and his wife the gift of immortality. Over the ancient Sumerian city of Uruk, there once ruled a wise and powerful but tyrannical king named Gilgamesh. He was 2/3 a god and 1/3 immortal, famed for his exploits in war and for his prowess as an unbeatable wrestler. Gilgamesh was also lustful, and he would abduct any woman who took his fancy, whether she was single or married. The people of Uruk were greatly distressed at this, for no one could overcome Gilgamesh. So they prayed to the goddess Aruru to fashion a man who could overpower Gilgamesh in order that he would leave their women in peace. Aruru then created the mighty Enkidu, a hairy man with legs like a bull. Enkidu roamed with the wild beasts and enabled them to escape the traps of hunters. On hearing of Enkidu's strength, Gilgamesh sent a courtesan out to Enkidu's watering place to entice him. When she saw Enkidu, the courtesan disrobed, exposing her breast, and Enkidu went to lie with her. After this, his animal companions shunned him because Enkidu had lost his natural innocence. Enkidu then had nothing to do but follow the courtesan's advice and return with her to Uruk. Back in his palace, Gilgamesh dreamed of struggling with a powerful man who could master him. When he told the dream to his mother, Ninson, she said it meant that he and Enkidu would become close companions. And after an awesome wrestling match, Gilgamesh and Enkidu sat down together as friends. Enkidu was invited to live in the palace and share the honors with Gilgamesh. One night, Enkidu had a nightmare in which he was snatched up by a strange, terrible creature with eagle claws who cast him into the underworld of death. When Gilgamesh heard of the dream, he offered a sacrifice to Shamash, the sun god, who advised him to go and fight Kumbaba the Strong, the king of the Cedar Mountain. When they learned of his plan to go to the Cedar Mountain, Enkidu, Ninson, and the people of Uruk tried to dissuade Gilgamesh. To no avail. Gilgamesh was determined to make the long journey and battle Kumbaba. So Enkidu joined his friend in the two set forth. They traveled northwest, leaving their fertile land behind, crossing a vast desert, reaching the Amanus Mountains, and finally arriving at the resplendent Cedar Mountain in the stockade of the monster Kumbaba. Enkidu's heart quailed within him, but Gilgamesh issued a challenge to Kumbaba. No answer came, so they made a sacrifice to the gods and settled down for the night. During the night, Gilgamesh had a dream of victory. In the morning, Kumbaba charged them, and after fight, Gilgamesh was able to knock Kumbaba to the ground, where Enkidu cut his head off. The two heroes bathed, dressed, and made offerings to the gods. Then Ishtar appeared to Gilgamesh and tried to seduce him. But Gilgamesh spurned her, saying that her lovers usually had dire fates. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu returned to Uruk with the cedars, Ishtar had her vengeance plan. With the help of Anu, she loosed the bull of heaven against Uruk. In the course of wrecking the city, the bull was caught and slaughtered by Gilgamesh and Enkidu. Then, in an act of utter rashness, Enkidu threw the bull's hide in Ishtar's face, telling her he'd do the same to her if he could. The goddess Ishtar then laid a mortal curse upon Enkidu, and after 12 days of sickness, he died. Gilgamesh was inconsolable over the death of his friend, for he realized that he must die one day as well. Determined to find the secret of immortality, Gilgamesh went forth in search of Utnapishtim, the man on whom Enlil had conferred life everlasting. He traveled west to the far off Mount Mashu, which was guarded by scorpion men. With a trembling heart, Gilgamesh approached the chief scorpion man who permitted him passage into the mountain. After a long time in a tunnel, he stepped out into the garden of a goddess. The goddess advised Gilgamesh to return home, enjoy life, and accept death gracefully. But Gilgamesh was insistent on finding Utnapishtim, so the goddess directed him to an Utnapishtim boatman. The boatman warned of the turbulent waters of death that surrounded Utnapishtim dwelling. However, Gilgamesh would not be put off, and with the boatman's help, he managed to cross the waters. At last, Gilgamesh arrived at the home of the immortal man. When Gilgamesh told Utnapishtim of his quest for eternal life, Utnapishtim laughed at his foolishness and told his own story of how he had won immortality. Then Utnapishtim challenged Gilgamesh to stay awake as he himself had done for 6 days and 7 nights. But the exhausted Gilgamesh had already fallen asleep. The wife of Utnapishtim took pity on the sleeping hero and persuaded her husband to reveal the secret of immortality. They awoke Gilgamesh and told him of a prickly plant that lay at the bottom of the sea. Gilgamesh set off at once to find the plant. When he came to the ocean, he tied boulders to his feet and plunged in. He sank to the bottom, found and plucked the prickly plant, untied the boulders, and swam to the surface with the precious plant. Gilgamesh went homeward with a high heart, for now he could confer everlasting life on himself and the people of Uruk. He crossed the waters of death, the garden of the goddess. He went through Mount Mashu and traveled eastward. Within a few days' journey of home, Gilgamesh laid the plant on a rock and dove into a small lake to bathe. And while he was swimming, a snake approached the plant and ate it. Gilgamesh wept long and bitterly to think he had wasted his enormous effort to gain eternal life. The snakes would live forever, but human beings must die. Gilgamesh returned to Uruk with a heart broken. He knew what a miserable existence the dead lived in the nether world, for Enkidu had revealed it to him. His only consolation was that the walls of Uruk would outlast him as monuments to Gilgamesh. The analysis of this story is that Babylonian myths appear more dynamic and masculine than those of Egypt. The prominent gods are male except for Ishtar. In the creation myth, it is the male Marduk who slays the monster's goddess and orders the cosmos. And Utnapishtim is a patriarch, much like the biblical Noah. But beyond this, Gilgamesh is a more imposing figure than Osiris. Isis is the dominant figure of the myth of Osiris, whereas Osiris is idealized and static. Gilgamesh is drawn as a real man capable of development. If Gilgamesh is lecherous and headstrong, he is also manly, courageous, a true friend and superb fighter, and a king who tries to give his people immortality. He suffers as we do, and he is obliged to face death as each of us must. Furthermore, Gilgamesh grows in a maturity as the story progresses. At first, he is a self-centered despot who cares only for fighting and women. Then he makes a friend of Enkidu, and the two of them act partly for the benefit of Uruk and killing the monster Kumbaba, bringing home the cedars and slaying the celestial bull. Finally, Gilgamesh goes off to procure immortality for himself and his people, sparing himself nothing in the attempt. If his story has many legendary elements, we recognize an authentic hero in Gilgamesh. And this is the end of this story, and I thank you.